Welcome to episode 4 of Let's Talk Worship podcast. My name is Malvina Lorocina, and we are going to be talking today about one of my favorite topics, which is the Tabernacle of David. This is a podcast that was designed to equip people in a new language of the new move of what God is doing regarding worship, restoring the Tabernacle of David, but mostly to create a community where we can come and talk about these subjects that can be controversial sometimes, and depending on the denomination you belong to, and brings division. But we're trying to bring people with a common understanding of what worship, carrying the presence of God, honoring God, how can we build community. So the objective of the podcast is to get the word out. So I invite you to like, to share, to comment, give it to your friends, tell people about it, and not to criticize, but to come and debate sometimes, so we can get to a common form of what God is trying to build. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has a passion to build a house, a place where he can dwell, that he can rest. Psalm 132 has been the foundation of a lot of this, where the Lord, David gave an oath to the Lord, I will not quit, because he is desperate to find a place where the Lord is going to dwell and rest. Resting meaning he remains. Okay, so it's not just a activity for a minute and everybody goes home. No, he remains, and with that he brings transformation and impact to communities and society. So with that, I want to thank Inside Now for allowing me to host the podcast in their platform, but also I want to thank those that financially have come to partner with us. If you're interested in partnering or have products that would like to be promoted on the webcast, you can always contact me at malvinalorocina.com, and we can talk, we can see how we can do these things. And if you're interested in be part of that community, reach out. We will figure out a way and we can become one and worship in one accord. I think that will be one of the things that the Lord is desiring for the coming days. As I said earlier, Psalm 132 is an important one because it speaks of that oath made by David to the Lord. I won't quit, Lord. I won't quit until I can build you a place where you can dwell and rest. So we're looking for a place where the Lord is going to remain, not just an activity for a minute or a worship session for a minute, and the worshipers are leading us. No. We're talking for a people that are meant to worship all the time with their lives, and that when the presence of God manifests, the manifest presence of God, we know how to honor it, how to carry it. So that is the objective of this. In Psalm 132, I encourage you to read it, to make it part of your mission in life, because it is part of mine. And as a community, I think we need to grow in that zeal, a zeal for the house of the Lord. In previous episode, I have mentioned how this all started, some of the prophetic words that I have received, the restoration of the Tabernacle of David, looking for craftsmen of sound, and many other words, and also the need for a language, a common language. We're not talking of worship as we do worship in a church, or worship as we do worship in a tent. We're talking about a life of worship and understanding the culture of heaven, understanding when the presence of God manifests, becoming familiar with presence. Because as we do that, then we're going to be able to honor him more. And as the more we honor him, the more he delights, the more he is content with us. And he's always happy with us. But I'm talking about that presence lingering so that we can impact not just our lives, So it's not just about us, it's about us providing a place for him on earth as it is in heaven. So today, the subject is the Tabernacle of David. In order to talk about the Tabernacle of David, I need to talk about the history of how the Tabernacle of David came about. Why a Tabernacle of David if they had the Tabernacle of Moses? But the story begins with the Tabernacle of Moses and the sons of Eli. You guys know that in Exodus, the Lord gave Moses a blueprint to create a tabernacle with 3 courts, and only the high priest goes into the presence of God. That was at a time of the year, and the people had to atone and they had to do different things. Old Testament. Moses went to Mount Sinai. He got the blueprint. It was an experience he had, amazing, and he knew exactly dimensions, colors, fabrics. He knew it all. Imagine if today we could hear God, and we should be able to because we have the Holy Spirit inside of us. But unfortunately, we have a lot of prophetic words, and sometimes we don't know what to do with them. We need to get back to that connection to the heavens. Moses had a direct line to heaven, face to face with the Lord, with that presence. He could interact with the Lord because the manifest presence of God changed his face. That was the download of the Tabernacle of Moses. And that was part of a shadow of things to come. Okay, so first came the natural, and then we see the New Testament, Jesus fulfilling that in our lives. We become that temple. He atoned for our sins, and now we have access to being close to him, intimacy with him in his presence. That's not the presence I'm talking about. I'm talking about the manifest presence of God that will reveal himself to us like he did in the burning bush. We saw some examples of that. What does it mean to carry presence? What does it mean presence? So I encourage you to look previous episodes so that you can get into the common language and the perspective where I'm coming from. I'm not giving you a new theology. I'm just reading the Bible. So the first thing is, this is the Tabernacle of Moses. And in the Holy of Holies, it has 3 parts, the tabernacle. In the Holy of Holies, it was the Ark of the Covenant. When the ark came and rested in Shiloh, we're talking 1 Samuel, if you want to go to the scriptures. In the book of 1 Samuel, Eli was the priest who had 2 sons who were totally corrupt. And they were corrupting the activities around the tabernacle. That was Tabernacle of Moses. Those young men were doing everything they shouldn't have done. They had no reverence. They were eating the sacrifice. They were doing immoral things. It was horrible. Eli was not addressing it. We have Samuel who now addresses them. But it happens that in 1 Samuel, to give you reference, in 1 Samuel chapter 4, there is the battle of Aphek. Here, the Israelites find themselves in war with the Philistines. And when this happens, the sons of Eli come up with a brilliant idea. Why don't we take the Ark of the Covenant as if it was an amulet or a lucky charm, and you take it and you put it in the war, and hopefully we'll win. And I'm using this history to highlight some things. A lot of the times we feel that we do use our worship and we use all these things to ensure we can defeat the things the enemy is doing with our lives. No, we don't worship to get this in return. We worship because he is a holy God. So that's the first thing that we need to come to understand. Like the sons of Eli, we don't use the Ark of the Covenant lightly. We don't manipulate it so that we can get what we think we need to eliminate the things that are demonic. No, the Philistines won that war and they captured the ark. Imagine that. This is the presence of God goes to the enemy. The sons of Eli, and Eli died. There's death that comes with that lack of reverence, I believe. And I know it's Old Testament, but hear my heart. They just thought it was something you can just drag around and get what you need. So a lot of the times in present times, we do that. Let's worship so that way God can move in this city. Wait. You worship him because he is holy and he's a big God. Now, if you worship and you honor his presence, I promise you he will address the issues. I'm not talking about a house of prayer, and I addressed that in the previous episode. I'm not talking about a house of worship. I'm talking about a house of presence that's going to host the manifest presence of God. Okay, so there are conditions, and we're going to cover some of those. Well, continuing with the story, what you have is the Philistines capture that ark. Now the Philistines are going through, oh my goodness, they have tumors, they have hemorrhoids, they have all kinds of things, because in that presence, when you're not right, things happen. You bumped against that presence because you will be confronted. So the Philistines are now 7 months later, get rid of this. We don't want it. And I love, and this is just a sidebar, I love the fact that the Philistines in the scriptures call him the true God. The real, the new true God, they call it in some translations. So they knew this God has power. So they want to get rid of it because even their Dagon God is falling in front of the presence. So they knew this thing we can't control. And I believe me, if the manifest presence of God shows up, you can't control it. Okay, so a lot of our services are very measured, a lot of protocol, a lot of things. So we're going to look at what the Tabernacle of David became and the kind of activities that go on in there with order, but yet is very alive. So the next thing that happened is they take it out, they bring it to a city called Beth Shemesh. When they go into that city, the people, oh, here's the Ark of the Covenant, let's go. And they start looking into the Ark. Well, again, no reverence. They just have curiosity. We have a lot of people, to apply it to modern times, that here's the presence. We are in a holy moment. Things are happening, and everybody wants to take it lightly. They're drinking coffee, they're roaming around doing different things. They want to talk, some go down to the phone, and there's no reverence. Now, I understand God will meet you where you are, but I'm not talking about anything for humans. I'm talking about ministering unto the Lord. And I do believe this is a calling, okay? So my objective is not to create a conflict or a division within the body. We need both. There's a tension between ministry and between presence. We have to minister to the Lord and we have to minister to the people. And the Levites had to do both, okay? The high priest, though, ministered to the Lord. And that's what the Lord is looking for. And we will see how this eventually will guide us into the order of Melchizedek, but I'm moving ahead of myself. So in this location, the people that had no reverence, Beth Shemesh, they're just looking and they all die. So they move it out and they bring it to another location. It's been there for years. And I will add that while Samuel anointed King Saul had a tabernacle, which is what that tabernacle from Shiloh is now in Hebron. That tabernacle had no presence. It did not have the Ark of the Covenant. So David becomes king after Saul was king for 40 years with no ark. And to me, it tells me they were going through movement things. I'm not sure what the high priest was doing because his job was to honor that presence, to minister unto the Lord and go in there at a certain time of the year. So there is nothing to go into. So for 40 years, they worshiped outer court things and did other things, but there is no ark. And that to me is very significant. You can spend 40 years doing services and have not experienced the presence of God. And to me, that's very sad. So part of my passion here is, can we focus, Lord, if you don't come with us, we don't want this, correct? So, and I know this is not the heart for everybody. So please, just hear my heart. It is important that we find a community of people that are called, like the Levites were called, like the high priests were called, to minister unto the Lord. So the presence has been put away in the houses of Abinadab, and there it stays. Here comes David, gets anointed king, first anointed king of Judah, then king of Israel. Poor guy had to fight his anointing. I know how he felt. You have to endure a lot of things, because a lot of time that anointing, that desire for presence, King Saul hated him. there is always an opposition. His own wife, who has the genetics of King Saul, was embarrassed by his outburst of worship in front of praise in front of the ark. So there will always be an opposition to the passion and the zeal that people have when they want that presence, that focus on this holy God. So it will interfere with your protocol. It's going to interfere with your routine. It's going to interfere with your teachings. But remember, we're not talking about a synagogue. Jesus went and taught in the synagogue, but in the temple, well, when he went in the temple, he really got a little bit of righteous anger. He got upset because they were doing things that were not honoring. This is not a house of thieves. You made it a house of thieves. They're not thieves. He gets upset. Why? Because we can bring things in the house that are not meant for this holy God. So that's going to take me to some of the conditions of the Tabernacle of David. Next, from Abinadab's house, David gets this thing inside of him. I must have that ark here. Okay, so he makes it a mission to go and get it. But unfortunately, he never inquired of the Lord. So even a man who, and I can relate, oh my God, can I relate? Past 7 years, I have made so many mistakes. And you heard some of that in episode number 1. How many errors, how many misunderstandings of what I thought God told me, how many people hated us because what we were doing didn't fit anywhere. And really, I had limited understanding and very little community. So 7 years later, here I am going, people, where are you? We need to build this for the Lord all across the nations. But very few people want it. So I don't know. I'm sure you're out there. So this is a cry for where are the people that are passionate to host and honor the presence of God, like David was. So he made many mistakes. He put a cart, a human cart, put the ark on it. And of course, we know the story where he stumbled and Uzzah tried to grab it and he dies. And by the way, for those that would like to know what scriptures I'm referring to, we are in 1 Samuel chapter 6 or 1 Chronicle 13 when he's going to bring the ark into Jerusalem. So if you read between 1 Samuel 4 and 1 Samuel 6 and 7, you're going to see this history. And for the sake of time, I am not reading the scriptures, but please do it. Go in there and evaluate the steps taken and what happened when you take the presence of God and treat it like any other human thing. You cannot make a human thing and honor God. You have to have hearts that are crazy for a holy God and that will lay everything down for him. And remember, in previous episode, I have defined what a worshiper is. It's not a musician. We are all called to worship. It is a calling. You have to, if you love God, you worship. And your life should be a life of worship. And your praises are an outer experience of what you think of him, what he's done for you. And so we need to discover what it is to minister to him. We don't have to like it because the worship is not for us. The worship is for him. So this is where I want to make the distinction. A lot of people will measure their worship because the musicians were good or not. That has nothing to do with you. You should not be led into worship. You worship because he is holy. You love the Lord your God with everything you have. So I can derail in that part. But coming back, he puts it in a cart, a man dies, and he's crazy. That happened to me. 7 years later, I said, stop. I need to stop. What is it that I'm doing wrong that everywhere I go, there are dead bodies in the process? Or the people don't like me. They want to kill me. So in that, this is part of that. I understand that we need revelation on how we're going to host the presence. We need people that can partner with us to carry that presence. Presence carriers. We need presence pioneers. We need apostles of presence. We need houses of presence. And I know it's a concept, but we haven't really, and maybe it exists and I'm not aware, so forgive me, but it is, I need to see it. So if it exists anywhere, let me know because I'll be on a plane tomorrow. So that is one of the things that I think we need to look for in the coming days. The bigger the darkness, the more we host His presence. And you will see how that presence will shine against the darkness. So it's going to be intense, but we're not doing it because we want the darkness to go away. We're doing it because we want God in our midst. So David goes and inquires of the Lord, and they put the ark in the house of Obed-Edom. And Obed-Edom is a man who knew how to honor the presence. Day and night he would go after the presence. And there he was. Oh my goodness. And he's prospering. So while other people are dying and other people are didn't do very well in the presence of the ark, Obed-Edom is doing just fine. So David gets really curious and says, my goodness, what is it that I need to go get that? He inquires of the Lord, and the Lord reminds him that there is a protocol. You go to how the presence is carried, how the ark is carried. It's carried in the shoulders of the Levites. It's a governmental process. To presence is governmental. So if you have presence, you can establish heaven on earth. And in order to do that, you need people that are familiar with the heavens so that they can manifest it down here. Just like Hebrews 8 tells you that the tabernacle was a copy of the sanctuary in heaven. That is taking something from up there, and Moses was a man that was able to do that and bring it down. So the same way, we should be able to say, okay, Lord, how do you want these things done? What is that government that you desire established here? It's not a political campaign. It is a governmental foundation for the presence of God. And if you notice, David discovered it has to be Levitical. Don't touch it. It goes on the shoulders. Shoulders are usually speak of government in the scriptures, and I'm not going to expand on that, but take my word for it. And of course, he is making sacrifices not to atone the people. Remember, this is not a ministry to the people. This is a ministry, burnt offerings in every 6 steps. He's killing animals. There is a river of blood that's going down as they're going 6 miles into Jerusalem. The interesting part is he does not bring it into the tabernacle of Moses in Gibeon. He doesn't. He brings it into Zion, Jerusalem. He established a tent that he had built. Now remember, Moses heard from the Lord. David, there's nowhere in the scripture that says that David heard the Lord, build me a tent. He didn't. He just knew in his heart that this is the place where I can put that ark and he will dwell in it. And he built that tent and he put that ark. And in there, he established a new order. And I do believe that this is a precursor. The restoration of that tabernacle of David is a precursor of the order of Melchizedek. You need to be a royal priesthood. He was a priest and a king of the order of Melchizedek, as is mentioned in Psalm 110. David was on the tribe of Judah. He had no right to put the ephod on by the law, but he was prophesying that now, if I put this ephod on, I am a king, but I'm also a priest, and I understand the heart of God. I can worship with everything I have. Now, remember, he prays undignified, and he actually takes his garments out, off, and his wife sees him. Remember, there is one word. There are many words for praise, but there's one word called tehillah. You praise like you look like crazy. And I have been a victim of my crazy worship and be kicked out of places because people don't understand it. It doesn't fit the denomination. We don't get up. We don't stand up. We don't dance. We don't do. We do that. We have all these rules. But each denomination can do what they need to do. But these are the houses to minister to a service unto the people. There are pastors that are, sometimes they spend too much time fleecing the flock, but that is their function, correct? So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking a competition of that. I'm talking about, so a lot of people think this is going to replace that. I've been kicked out of places because pastors feel threatened because people are coming this way. No, we're not competing. We have to have both. You need to have horizontal ministry to the people, teaching to the people, but you need to host the presence of God. And that's what David understood. That tabernacle of Moses is going to stay there, but he has no ark. The ark is over here in Jerusalem. And everything in that tent that he built, because his heart was for it, and God allowed it, Oh, he didn't let him build a house. Mm-mm. Don't build me the temple, but you will build me that tent. And Amos 9 says, we will restore the tabernacle of Moses. And so he says it in Acts 15. So in there, he puts the ark. And what I love about it is his kingdom funded this tent, funded everything in there. Instruments, musicians, everything in there is paid by King David. The kingdom is now funding the presence. Well, the presence funds itself, but what I mean is every activity around that presence is funded by the king. Correct? The Levites don't do that. They just 24/7. They are singing. They were gatekeepers that kept the tent from only those things that are consecrated going in there. Why? Because that is holy. Yes, it was an open door. It was a picture of what Jesus has done. The veil has rendered that has been torn, and there is no separation. But at the same time, whatever came into that place had to be consecrated. The men had to be consecrated, the Levites. Now remember, not all Israelites went in there, just the Levites. There were 4,000 musicians, 288 singers. We want to make it a tent of singers. No, it's a tent of people that have a governmental assignment to carry the presence of God, and they can honor the ark, the presence, the manifest presence of God. So there were doorkeepers. They had to make sure that by the ark, there was nothing weird. They've seen enough people die, correct? So at this point, we've learned our lesson. Okay, so that's one of the things that I believe if we were to create these locations, and we've tried, we made a portable tabernacle and we used to go here and there and so on, and we've seen glimpses of it, but every time that presence shows up, it creates commotion because the Lord is going to give you extravagant sounds, and he manifests, and most of the time people don't recognize him, and that's unfortunate because they miss on the experience of a manifested presence. So if you host it, you have to be ready for the extraordinary. He is transcendent. He's not an ordinary basic human being like us. He is amazing, and we need to understand what is it he likes. How does he like it? Okay, and it's not a striving. I've been accused of striving. No, it's not about striving. Is can we try to consecrate these places? All kinds of people here pulling this way, pulling that way. Can we focus on him and him only and what he wants to say? But people become very critical. That has been my personal experience, and hopefully it's just mine. But if we see the Tabernacle of David, there are contrasts between that and the Tabernacle of Moses. Okay, now remember, when you look at Psalm 24, lift up your head, all ye gates. But who are those that can be in that presence with that king? Those with pure heart, pure heart and clean hands. There is a consecration necessary for people to carry the presence of God. Okay, I'm not talking about the presence that lives inside of you or the omnipresence of God. He's always with us. I get it. He'll never leave you nor forsake you. I'm talking about the Holy God is now manifesting in our midst because we bow down to him and we say, we don't do it without you. And when he starts manifesting, are we ready to host him? And I have seen people very irreverent, nonchalant, drinking their coffee, doing all kinds of conversations, pulling their phones, phone is ringing. There is no reverence. Now, I'm not talking about a Sunday service either. That needs to continue. That people need to be ministered to. People need to experience the prophetic. People need to be, prayed for, be taught, all that kind of stuff. That was not happening in the Tabernacle of David. And the next episode, I'm going to cover some of the activities that occurred in the Tabernacle of David. Because if you look at the description of the Tabernacle of David, you realize it wasn't a church. It was not an open thing for all Israelites. The people in there were Levitical, and they were all listed, correct? In that ark, they weren't high priests only that went in front of the ark. It was all the Levites, and they all had names, and they all had orders. And they had their people who plays the trumpet. They were skilled. They had to be skilled. And that's where a lot of people think we put a tent and we put a bunch of musicians in there. Well, no. Are they consecrated? And do they have a heart to carry the presence of God, or are they performing? And maybe they are consecrated. But a lot of the times, the tents, what is the result of the tent? What did it do? Has it shifted anything? Has it changed anything? Sometimes it's not even good results because God really bumps against some things. Correct. So I'm being provocative because I think we need to develop a understanding of presence, because when we come as a royal priesthood, we are going to start understanding the order of Melchizedek, which David understood very, very well. So one of the thing is the proper understanding of worship and the holiness of God. That's going to be very important for us to restore the Tabernacle of David. Also, we need to know God is holy. I've been saying that over and over and over again. He has mercy, he has grace, but he's always holy, and he's holy no matter how much love he has. We have to honor his holiness. The other thing is there is an order, and David understood that. He created a Levitical order on who ministered where and how. And I will cover probably some of the ministries in there. There's plenty of names. If you read the book of Chronicles 16, chapter 15, 16, you're going to see all that David established in that tabernacle of David. Precious. Another thing is you start seeing manifestation of the heavens and the voice of the Lord manifesting in there, which is where most of the Psalms come from. I think a lot of the revelation that David had about God were his own experience, but also came in that tabernacle. So you see Psalms that predict Jesus. You see Psalms that are amazing songs of praise. And that is something that's really important. The tabernacle, it was about praise, gratitude, and very joyful. So a lot of our services are not that. And, we're always very sad, and we think that worship has to be, so somber and so has to be reverent, and it has to be, but it is praise. We're praising him because he's amazing and he's majestic, and we are recognizing all his attributes. So we needed, David knew he needed to prepare the Levites. He needed to do that. So one of the things that we can compare is one was in Mount Sinai, and like the tabernacle of Moses came from Mount Sinai. The other one is Mount Zion. It's two high places, but they have two different purposes. One was the law. The other one is a prophetic picture of the new covenant. Jesus opening, rendering the veil, and priest, we are priests. Priests, Peter, in First Peter will tell you, we are a royal priesthood. So we are priests, we are Levitical. So we're priesthood, Levitical Old Testament. But we are those of the order of Melchizedek, where we are like David, kings, correct? King of all the kings, but we're also priests. So the ones that went in there were the priests. There were 12 tribes. The Levites are the one in charge of doing the Tabernacle of David. So as we restore, we need to embrace our priesthood. That means you got to understand the ark. You need to understand presence, because when you face that presence, there are things you need to do because he's still holy. Yes, we are in a new covenant when he comes close and is intimate and they give us mercy and grace. But for this kind of move that we're talking about, transformational, that brings finances and that changes cities, we need to understand the holiness of God and how to honor his manifested presence. So one thing that I wanted to mention was there are parallels on the two tabernacles. One had a lot of activity. praising, and we're going to see in the next episode all the fun things that those Levites did inside the Tabernacle of David. In the Tabernacle of Moses, there was none of that. You atone, outer court, the priest they get cleansed, and the high priest goes into the place. So if we do a parallel, okay, I'm going to try to find my list here. You need to understand that there are things that happen in the Tabernacle of David that did not happen in the Tabernacle of Moses. So that is a basic understanding and maybe we'll cover that in our next episode, because unless we see the two balancing each other, we are not going to understand how the service, our Sunday services, our teaching, our Bible studies, our deliverance ministries, our prophetic ministry is all horizontal. It's all for the people that we outreach. We teach them, we develop them, we disciple them. That's the mandate. The command is go disciple all nations. That is to be done. But there is a ministry to the presence of God. And that is like the Sadokites. We'll do an episode on Zadok the priest. And he was amazing, but he was the one that honored and understood what God desired for the kingdom. So he's the one that will be in the Holy of Holies in the Millennium Temple of Ezekiel. So we need to understand those parameters. So for the sake of time, I think I'm going to stop here. I've covered a lot of information, but I would like to tell you that, read the scriptures, evaluate this, and then on the next episode, we will look at those parallels and the activities that took place in that Tabernacle of David, so that we can understand these houses of presence. And I know I may not have a biblical reference for that, but I don't want to call it a house of worship, because we've already done that. And then people go in there and they sing and they sing and they sing and they sing, but they are not expecting the presence to manifest. And if it does, most of the time people don't recognize it, or anybody comes in and it's an in and out, because people are just worshiping, hoping that God's going to show up. We need to understand the foundation of that in order for the manifest presence to come. The houses of prayer, we make them. There are a lot of good ones out there, but a lot of them are interceding for cities and doing different things, and they're decreeing things and establishing things because we have this and have that. But we're looking for whatever the name is, a place where people are honoring God and God only. So most of our opposition has been that people need something. They don't like the music. They need prayer. We got no prophetic words. So so we've been struggling, hitting a wall, trying to tell people this is all for God. We're here just for the Lord. And in order to get your ministry, you may have to go to your pastor. But we've also seen the opposition from the pastoral ministry, not all, but for some, where they feel the people are coming here, they're not going there. And I think it's because there is a misunderstanding on the people that feel if I come here and I feel all warm and fuzzy, I don't have to go and get taught or get or minister or my tithe goes there. And that's why, again, it was a kingdom that funded the Tabernacle of David. And I'm going to close with this. They understood it was paid by a kingdom. It was not a Levitical tithe that gave the Levitical people. No, David funded the tent. So it's a kingdom that funds it. So it's not a church activity with the tithe and those tithes and offerings go there. This is funded by businesses, by kingdom people. And we need to understand that. And that's one of the areas where personally I've been trying to figure out how is this going to work. So again, if you're interested in partnering with us, let me know, malvinalotosina.com. Call us and we can talk about how can we experiment, because I don't know the accurate design yet. I seek the Lord every day on this, but and I've had many dreams, so I can speculate, but I think it's time for us to establish these houses where they honor God and it's ministry unto the Lord. And we need people with that heart that can lay down their lives for the Lord, because he will take care of yours if you do that. So I hope that makes sense. Again, thank you to Inside Out. Thank you to our partners. Thank you for listening. I know this is a subject that a lot of people, when I talk to them, says, "Oh, I don't understand it. I don't understand it." I ask you to pray to the Lord to give you, open your mind and give you wisdom. And maybe I got it wrong, but I do pray that we can get to a place where we can host his presence and honor him for the sake of transformation of places, but also for us enjoying him being in our midst. Thank you very much for listening. And I hope we see each other on the next episode, where we're going to expand on the activities that happen in the Tabernacle of David. Thank you very much. And until next time, remember, we meet every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Love you guys.